At this stage, you should have a concise and simple statement of requirements that spells out the objectives of your new system. In coming up with this, you will have first focused on the requirements of your business before taking a wider look at the technology so that you are fully aware of the opportunities for improvement. And let me emphasize again, it is the business driving technology, not the other way around. This part of the process can often take some time, as a choice of one package can significantly affect the overall solution. So a thorough examination of the options will often require several iterations before you find the optimum combination. In most cases, the best approach is to work through a short list of standard packages. You can review these in turn and select those with the best fit with your statement of requirements. If a package is only a partial fit, you may need to introduce some manual systems or commission some bespoke software to complete the solution. In some very rare specialized cases, you may require a fully bespoke solution. But before you can start seriously evaluating the contenders for your solution, a little detailed work must be done first. Amazing as it may seem, many of the problems I've come across arise from customers not fully understanding their current system. Just imagine a scene where a developer is delivering software to an end user for the first time for testing. The end user will say, "But it doesn't do this." The system developer responds, "But you never asked for that." The end user says, "It's obvious. Joe in the warehouse does that all the time." The developer says, "Well, Joe in the warehouse just told us he dispatches orders. He's too busy and he's told us everything he knows." I've seen this scene play out over and over again. To introduce change to a system at a late stage is hugely disruptive and expensive. So it's important to make sure right at the start that the chosen solution provides all the necessary functionality. You need to create a detailed checklist to make sure that the proposed solution not only provides all of the features required by your statement of requirements, but also is able to carry out all the essential operations of the system being replaced. Now, a system can be thought of as inputs, outputs, and processes. So you need to produce a detailed checklist of the inputs and the outputs. You will also need to make a critical review of the processes so that anything unusual is properly documented. An example might be an unusual commission calculation, which is peculiar to your business. You should bear in mind that your operations staff are busy and resistant to change, so they need to be incentivized to be engaged, cooperative, and forthcoming. It is at this stage of the project where commitment from the top becomes increasingly important to make sure this happens. The process of producing a specification needs a fair degree of common sense. I've seen specifications with hundreds of pages documenting the obvious, often accompanied with multicolored flow charts and diagrams that nobody can understand. But I've also seen complex systems documented in a few lines on the back of an envelope. So the person who produces the specification needs to have a good knowledge of the business, be fastidious, but also have a great deal of common sense. Businesses rarely take time to stand back and reevaluate what they are doing. So at this stage of a project is also a good time to have a good think about whether everything you are doing makes sense. And when you've been through that process, you should have a checklist that you can then use to evaluate the potential solutions. Once you have your specification checklist, you can start evaluating the packages on your shortlist. I can't count the number of times where I've seen a software package demonstrated to an end user, which I know meets all of that user's needs, only to be met with a blank look at the end of the demonstration, and the user says, "No, that's not what we want." Then invariably, after much hard work and convincing, some months later, the same user is expressing their happiness at how the new system does everything they want. It can be very difficult to see an unfamiliar system for the first time and relate it to your business. Simple differences in terminology, presentation, or a different way of doing a familiar task, they all combined form a barrier. Unfamiliar data is also an obstacle. For example, if you deal with wine and the data on the screen is based on billiard equipment, it becomes difficult to see it as relating to your business. Take it from me, I actually did sell software to wine importers using a database based on billiard equipment. Luckily, my salespeople managed to rise to that challenge. We ended up being very successful, although things did get a lot better when we managed to load some wine data onto our demonstration system. Perhaps it's because of this unfamiliarity that prospective users are very keen on having user-friendly systems. But if you watch a mature business in action, there's nothing user-friendly about the way it works. Experienced order clerks will type in orders at breakneck speed, using short codes. Warehouse workers will say, pass me a J72, there's a customer with an IC20 needed at the door. Total gobbledygook to anybody unfamiliar with the business, but very efficient in terms of processing. Remember that you're a new user for a few hours only, and an experienced user for the next 10 years or more. One of the first wine systems I supplied is still being used today, a full 20 years later. So when you evaluate software, be objective and detached. Forget about the unfamiliar terminology and layouts. Just ask, is the process right for us? And don't choose on the basis of what will be easy for the new user. Make sure that it will be efficient and fast for the trained user, because that's what all of your users are going to be after the first day or two. For the most part, your choice should be business and process driven. But there are a couple of important ticks you need to get in that box before making a final decision. It is vital that you are comfortable with your system supplier and that you trust them. Your software supplier should be viewed as a strategic partner. Systems projects invariably take unexpected turns, and when this happens, you need a supplier that is helpful and flexible. Your supplier can also be your best source of advice. You may value the objective viewpoint of an independent consultant, but often they are like the restaurant critic that is very good at criticizing but cannot produce a plate of food himself. Your software supplier will often have been making real systems work with many customers for many years, but you need to check out their reference sites to make sure that this is the case, because if not, you may need to look at another supplier. And finally, you need to make sure that your system is hosted on a reliable hardware platform. Now, if you have an extensive investment in an existing IT infrastructure, cost considerations may constrain you to only looking at software compatible with that platform. But otherwise, you need to make sure that any hardware that you use is of a standard nature that you know will be supported for years to come. These days, cloud systems are becoming very popular, and with good reason. For the small to medium-sized business, a cloud-based system removes most of the pain involved in maintaining the hardware and the network infrastructure. But remember, always it is the business that drives your system choice, not the technology. So don't go leaping onto a cloud unless you are sure it measures up to your specification checklist. One of the first major consultancy jobs that I did involved helping a major aerospace company implement an assembly scheduling system that would drive their new manufacturing system. Now, this was a large company with a well-established organisation and very little appetite for change. The company management realised that to get the best use of the new software, the company needed a root and branch reorganisation to make the company fit the software. And, to its credit, the top management placed huge impetus behind this change and pushed it through in the face of a sceptical and unwilling workforce. A few years later, the company was transformed. Inventory levels were a fraction of their previous levels, profits replaced losses, and the company started winning more contracts. Yet, when I speak with smaller businesses, they are reluctant to make any internal change. Surely the software should be made to fit the company, they say. Didn't you say that the business drives the technology, not the other way around? But that is to misunderstand the process. It is the business needs that should drive the solution. But the best way to achieve this may be to implement a standard software package and turn the existing business structure upside down in order to suit the software. This type of change can be hard to swallow for a small business that has spent years developing a way of doing things and where the key people have a strong sense of ownership and pride in the existing system. But to move forward, a business needs to make hard choices from an objective standpoint. So don't bend over backwards trying to automate old procedures and practices. Instead, look for the best way of doing things with the current tools available. Often the most effective way of doing this will be to leverage the features available in existing packaged software. That could mean rethinking and reorganizing how you do business. But by using widely used software, you can be sure that it'll be well supported with lots of resources you can utilize, such as user groups, web forums, add-on products from third-party developers. If you have valuable business processes that reflect your core values, which no existing package fully supports, you can build a system that supports these either by introducing new procedures, using an add-on product, customizing pre-existing software, or by writing a new software package totally from scratch. Most businesses seriously underestimate the resources they need to implement a new system, but this is nothing compared to the way they drastically underestimate the risks and costs involved with bespoke software development. You need to be very sure before deciding that your best course involves some bespoke modification. But if this is the case, then a customized solution, that is taking a standard package and modifying its behavior, is far less risky than a complete new development. If you decide to go down the customization route, you should ensure that the core software can be upgraded using the normal upgrade procedures without affecting the customized module. Otherwise, you'll be stuck with software that is frozen in time and will become more and more difficult to support. And B, get plenty of references from other customers that will confirm how easy the software is to customize and how well the customized parts integrate with the core software. If these conditions are in place, a customized solution can work very well, supporting the unique aspects of your business while preserving most of the advantages of using a widely used, well-supported product. In the rare circumstance where a completely new software development may be the best solution, you have a challenging undertaking. And because of this, I will devote the next episode in this series of talks exclusively to that topic. So you can skip that episode if you don't feel that it's relevant to you and go straight to the talk on implementation. Once you have selected the software for your new system, you can start planning the implementation. An implementation can be affected by many things, such as negotiating contracts with suppliers, availability of supplier resource, or availability of internal resource. The implementation will nearly always take longer than expected, and it will also consume more resources than expected. Now, if you ask me how I know this, it is simply because with over 30 years experience, I know this to be true because it is invariably so, even for the smartest, well-organized businesses. So you should ensure you have contingency in your budget before deciding to proceed further. Expect your plan to be fluid, so adopt a flexible planning system. For a project of any size, a dynamic project planning system based on critical path analysis is almost essential. Fluid projects are difficult to manage. People will try to use the fluidity to hide missed targets and push scope creep, so it is important to appoint a strong project manager that will be awake to these dangers. The major stages of the implementation are planning, overseeing software development, data take-on, training and installation. I will deal with all of these stages in detail in my later talk. I hope you found this talk useful. In the next talk, I look at bespoke software development in detail, but if this is not relevant to you, you could just skip this and carry straight on to the episode on implementation which follows.